Hi, this is Stephanie Lotvin of Tellybean Knits, and today I'm going to be showing you how to work row 1 of section 14, day 14. This is the setup row for section 14. If you are working from the Suburban Stitcher Advent Calendar and you have not yet opened your days 1 through 14 yarn, I suggest stopping the video here, pause here. There will be spoilers. I will be showing all 14 of the first 14 colors in the Suburban Stitcher Advent Calendar. So pause the video, open those yarns, come back, and when you're ready, we will work the setup row together. Okay, let's get started. I have here days 1 through 13 of the Suburban Stitcher Advent Calendar on my needles, and I am currently using an extremely long interchangeable needle, but this is for demonstration purposes only. You don't need to have an interchangeable needle that is this long. I just want to be able to, once we've completed the setup row, stretch out my stitches so I can show you what the setup row looks like when you're finished. Okay, so what we're going to be doing in this tutorial is first we're going to begin by placing all of the stitches that are currently on hold from the end of day 9 back on your needles. Then we are going to work across those stitches. Next, we will pick up and knit 24 stitches from the edge of days 10, 11, 12, and 13. We'll place 2 markers at the top of this point here on the end of day 13, and finally we will work across the live stitches from the end of day 13. I'm going to begin by placing my held stitches from day 9 back on my needles, and to do that I'm going to use this end of my circular knitting needle. It's coming from the tip of day 13, and I'm going to place those stitches back on my needles beginning at the center of my grand opening shawl. And I'm doing that because once I have those stitches back on my needles, I'll be able to work from this end of my needles and knit back across those stitches. So use this end of your knitting needle and place those stitches back on your knitting needle. You can, if you've been using scrap yarn, you can use your scrap yarn just to open up those stitches so it's easier to find where you're going to insert into the first stitch, and that way you don't miss any stitches. I'm going to insert my needle purlwise. I don't want to change the orientation. I don't want to turn any of those stitches. I just want to put those stitches back on my needles exactly the way that they are being held. And I'm planning to leave my scrap yarn in place as a lifeline in case there are any stitches that I have any problems with down the line, or if I feel like I need to rip back, make changes. Those lifelines are such a great insurance policy. I've left all of my scrap yarn in place so far in my shawl. I plan to do that throughout my shawl. And if you're feeling like you need a little extra insurance, always feel free to add in additional lifelines as you work. Okay, I've reached the point in my held stitches where I have this removable marker. I'm planning to leave this removable marker on my scrap yarn. So I'm just going to let that fall to the back, and I'm going to take a regular marker and put it on my needles to mark the spot that that removable marker was showing in my knitting. And then I'm going to finish by placing the final 3 stitches back on my needles. Let me show you what it looks like now that I have those stitches back on my needles. So I currently have my live stitches from the end of day 13, and then I have a gap that I plan to pick up stitches here, and I've placed all my held stitches back on my knitting needles from day 9, and I'm ready to begin my setup row for day 14, section 14. The right side of my work is facing me, and I'm ready for a right side row. So I have my stitches already scooted down to the end of my needles. I'm going to need color 14, And I'm going to start by slipping that first stitch purlwise with yarn in front, and then I'm going to bring that tail between my needles to the back of my work. And now I can join color 14. I'm going to knit one, give myself a little bit of a longer tail, 2, I'm going to slip that stitch marker and work a yarn over. Now I'm going to knit 87 stitches. This will bring me to the last 2 stitches that I have on hold from day 9, section 9. I'm just going to knit across those 87 stitches. Okay, I've worked to the last 2 stitches I had on hold. I've knitted 87 stitches, and I have the last 2 stitches that I had on hold from day 9, section 9. I'm just going to work a slip, slip, knit to decrease 1 stitch. And that is the end of the stitches that I had on hold from day 9. I've worked across those. And now I'm ready to pick up stitches in the gap along the edge of days 10, 11, 12, and 13. And when we were working these rows, we were slipping 2 stitches at the ends of these rows, which created this slipped stitch edge, and it makes it easier for us to pick up stitches. Just like when we were picking up stitches along the edge of 6, 7, 8, and 9, we're going to be picking up 1 stitch for each slip stitch edging. And we have 2 stitches, one that shows on the right side of our work and one that shows on the wrong side of our work, creating those V's. And we are going to be picking up 1 stitch for each of those V's on the wrong side of our work. So if you have any trouble finding those little V's, just turn your work, this is the right side, just turn it a little bit towards the wrong side of your work. The first stitch that you pick up is going to be in a gap. So you can see here, pull my scrap yarn out of the way. So you can see this ridge that was created whenever we had our slip stitch edging and picked up stitches along the edge of, this is day 9, section 9. There's a little bit of a little bit of a gap. You can see the two V's, or the V there. We're going to insert our needle into that little opening right along the edge. And we want to pick up two legs of our yarn. Got lots of little strands from where I've joined. Going to insert, pull the loop through, and pick up my first stitch. That first stitch is probably going to be your trickiest one to find, but you will want to pick up that stitch so you can get all 24 stitches. It's right next to where you decreased your stitch at the end of day 9. Now we're going to look for our second stitch, and once again we're looking for those little V's. Here's the little V, and we want to insert our needle under both legs of that V and pull another stitch through. That's 2. And then we're just going to continue down that edge, picking up 1 stitch for each slip stitch on that edging. So I have, let's see, I'm just going to check, 2, 5, 6, 7. Some of those little tails, if you haven't sewn them in, will probably get in your way. Just move them out of the way. 8, 9, 10, and you can see I'm just rolling my work towards me so it's easy to find those stitches on the wrong side. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and finally 24. Now, let me show you what I have here. It's going to be a little harder to spread out my knitting without losing any stitches since I'm in the middle of my work, but that's why I'm using the long needle. So right now, I've just picked up 24 stitches along the edge of days 10, 11, 12, and 13, and I am now at a point where at the point of my grand opening shawl, and I'm going to work across day 13 for the end of this setup row. And next, what I need to do, now that I've picked up those 24 stitches, is I'm going to first place a stitch marker, and I'm going to bring my needles together and move all those little tails of yarn that'll need to be woven in later out of my way. And I'm going to work a knit 2 together, and then I'm going to place another stitch marker on my needles, and now I'm going to knit to my next stitch marker, Okay, I have worked to my next stitch marker, and I'm going to work a yarn over. I'm going to slip that stitch marker, and then I'm going to knit 1, 2, and finally a knit 2 together. And I've just completed my setup row, so let me bring you back out so you can see what I've done. Spread out those stitches. Okay, I have just completed the setup row for day 14, section 14. I have a stitch marker placed on this border edge. I have 2 stitch markers at the point at the top of my shawl, and then I have 1 more stitch marker on my border edge. And you can see I have live stitches along the entire edge of the triangle, just as if I were working a triangle shawl. And now I'm ready to work the wrong side row, row 2 of day 14, section 14. I hope you found the tutorial helpful. Thank you so much for watching.